So now that we've worked on animating position, scale, rotation, and opacity, worked with text, animating different attributes within the text, also worked with masks and track mats and how we can animate things using track mats, let's take a look at how to animate with the anchor point. This can be a little bit tricky, but can also be really cool and a very simple animation. Let's jump into After Effects and see what we have going on. All right, so here I am in After Effects, and I've got my a piece that I've downloaded here by Pexels, or from Pexels.com, which is a bunch of images. So you want to find something for this type of assignment or project. You want to find something that's a large file that we can zoom in and still retain some decent quality. If we don't do that, things are going to start to pull apart real quickly. So in my timeline down below, I've got a 1920 by 1080 timeline or composition. I've created some simple text here that I'm going to just turn off for now. I'm not going to deal with that specifically. And I've got my layer down here, which is my image. Now, you can see I also have the layer open in the layers panel, not to be confused with like a layers panel in say Photoshop, but the layers panel. So look at it like almost like a source monitor, really. If you double click on it in your timeline here, it will pull up. There we go. It'll pull up into your source. Now, if I click on my anchor point or my anchor tool here to move my anchor tool, I can move it around in here, and you can see how it kind of moves in my source or my layer panel here when I move it over here in my project panel or in my composition menu. So we're going to animate this. So let's start with, say this is my starting point, and what's cool about this is we're going to set this as a starting point. We're going to come back to this in our animation so that we use it almost like as a home base type of situation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keyframe my anchor point at the beginning of my timeline. And we're going to zoom in a little bit here on our timeline down below because I don't need to see all of that. And I'm going to come out to about, say, for now 15 frames is fine. And instead of here in our project or our composition panel, I'm actually going to do my animation for the most part within the layers panel here with some things also going on in our timeline. So you can see here I've got anchor point and scale. Now if you don't see that, what you can do is hit A on your keyboard to show up anchor point and hold down shift and click S for scale, and now you can see those two attributes. Those are the two attributes that we're going to be animating for this particular type of a project. And so here we are, and I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the stopwatch for scale. So we've got an animation keyframe there, and jump back out to 15 frames. Again, instead of using my anchor point move tool, I'm going to use my selection tool. And watch what happens when I grab the anchor point in my layers panel, and watch what happens over here on the right hand side. So let's see if we can find that tool. Where are you? Okay, now that I know where it is, let's grab my selection tool, and I'm going to grab this anchor point here. I'm going to delete this keyframe. There we are. So now that I know where it is, I'm going to click and drag this to a spot that I want. So let's say I want to go to this image right here, and I'm going to put it down just a little bit, and you can see how now we've got some emptiness here on the right hand side. So now what we need to do is scale this up. So we'll come over to scale and zoom in a bit. And say I want to look at this particular photo. Let's zoom in here. Say I want to zoom in on this particular photo here, and I'm going to put some text below that photo. So I'm going to take my anchor point in my layers panel here and kind of move it into place like so. Cool. So there we are. There's our first animation. We come out. If I play this, hit spacebar to play. It zooms in like that. All right, cool. Now what we can do is add some text. So I'm going to click on my first text layer, and there it is. And we're going to, let's see if I must have some animations on it. Nope. There it is. Let's change the text to say black for now so we can see it. And I'm going to move it up right here. So maybe it's sitting on that Polaroid picture. And then I'm going to bring the start of this text over a bit. So once we get there, or right about there, let's start doing some animation with this. So I'm going to bring the opacity down to 0 and click that stopwatch next to opacity. And I'm going to bring it out to, say, I don't know, a couple frames there, bring it up to 100. So there we are. So what I've got going on now, play that back, zoom in, boom. And you can see the text appears. Okay, that's a quick animation. So now let's go ahead and duplicate these frames. So I'm going to copy those frames. I'm going to hit Control C, and I'm going to come out to about 2 frames and or 2 seconds and hit Control V to paste those. Now it's empty, or it's gone opaque, because we've gone from 0 to 100 and it's gone back to 0 to 100 again. So what we'll do is we'll right click on these keyframes and say Keyframe Assistant, Time Reverse Keyframes. And now it's visible. So we've got 0 to 100, 100 to 0. So they'll fade in and fade out. So we're going to do the same thing with these two. I'm going to select Anchor Point and Scale. Control C to copy. Control V to paste. Right click. Keyframe Assistant. Time reverse these keyframes. There we are. So that's our first set of animations. Let's take a look at it. All right. So one thing I would do is probably move these keyframes where the text comes on and off, back a little bit. There we are. So let's create another animation. This time let's go to one of these red ones. Why not? So I'm going to grab my selection tool. I'm going to find my anchor point somewhere in this image. There it is, right here. This time let's come down over to this one way down here. And we'll zoom in again. So we've got to take that scale, zoom in a bit. Looking good there. And now let's go ahead and bring another text layer in. So I'll turn my second text layer on. I'm going to bring it over. I can just drag this over so it starts and stops. And then I'm going to click T on my keyboard for opacity and bring this up to 100%. And then I'm just going to bring this up into place like so. Name to, there we go. And move this into place. And really what I could do is just basically copy this opacity here, hit Control C, come up to this one, Control V, and we'll delete that keyframe. And just like that. So that will help us there, right? So now that I've got my opacity set on this one, now we need to animate this one again in and out. So we've come in, boom. So we'll copy these 2 frames because we went back to our neutral position to our current position. So I'm going to select these 2 sets of keyframes, Control C, and I'm going to paste them right about there. Control V, again, Keyframe Assistant, Time Reverse. And I'm going to move these keyframes out a little bit. I want it to fade out a little bit before we leave it, just like that. There we are. Now another thing we could do to clean this up is to kind of shorten our text. So our text, obviously it comes in, it comes out, we don't need it from there. So what I can do with my text layer here selected, I've got name to selected, I'm going to hit Alt, right bracket, and it just kind of trims off the right end of that text. So again, for this one here on my text 1, or the first one that I used, that's called layer 3, I can come over to this section here, hit Alt, right bracket, and that trims it off. It makes it a little bit easier so you know, hey, this is what's visible right now. So now if I was to play through this, let's take a look. And there you go, and you're back to square one. So there you have it. It's a real quick and easy way to animate using the anchor point within the layers panel on this particular case. You can make some really cool credits, whether it's opening credits or closing credits. I hope you found this helpful and useful for your next project. And until next time, I'll see you in class.